Hey everyone, how's it going?
Hi, thanks for joining us today.
Everyone, if you don't remember us or if this is your first time, I'm Sammy from Avid CNC.
And my name's Corey, and we're here to teach you about CNC technology and how to incorporate it into different types of projects, and today specifically sign making.
Yeah, so sign making is one of my favorite subjects, and I mean of CNC in general, but sign making I think is a really fun and easy way to get into CNC fabrication. So we'll just nerd out all about CNC sign making and materials and software selections and all of that. But while we wait for everyone to join us, like I want to know where everyone's from. Hey Olivier, hey Ty, what's up? Thanks for joining. Okay, who else? Pete, good to see ya. Yeah, everyone to drop in the comments of where you're calling in from or you're joining from. If you have your Instagram or YouTube channel, please drop that in. I think we have there's so many amazing makers, and um, I like to make sure that everyone is aware and sharing all of the sweet maker friends that we have here. So
Yeah, thanks everyone for joining us. Uh, we like talking about different types of CNC applications, and for me, sign making is something that we all can appreciate, no matter what your skill set is with CAD or CAM. Sign making is a very approachable, very rewarding thing to be able to accomplish.
yeah, absolutely. So I guess we could just go ahead. Oh wow! Hey Greg, good to see you. Awesome.
Jeremy from Indiana and Dan out there in Radford. Hey, thanks for joining.
Yeah, we got representation from France and
Hawaii.
Hawaii. Yeah, Kauai. I've heard last time I was in Kauai, I met somebody at uh, on a tour, and they said, "Oh, you got to go check out Greg's shop and with his CNC set up." So that's awesome. I'm glad you're
Yeah, we
here.
got Kenya and Georgia, Arizona, South Florida. Yeah, all over. Thank you so
Dave, good to see
much for
you.
joining. Yeah.
All right. Okay, so let's go ahead and switch over to the presentation mode. All right, Corey, I'm just gonna fix your camera really quick. There we go. Oh, you're big. Okay, perfect. Thanks everyone for joining us.
Yeah, Chris is here from Virginia. Mike, fantastic.
Okay, perfect. Okay, um, here is our slides that we have pulled up. We have a lot of excellent examples of different types of CNC sign making, and let's just go ahead and get into it.
Yeah, yeah, and I think building off of other people's designs or approaches is a great way to start here. And so let's look at some different things that we've done and other people have done and get inspired to make some of our own.
Yeah. So today we're going to go through a couple different aspects of sign making. And that's going to include like why do we think sign making is a really great place to start when you're getting into CNC fabrication? How do we approach even the initial getting a job, designing a job, and then executing it, fabrication, and all those considerations too. And then we'll go through a couple different portfolio samples of signs I've made and signs Corey has made. Just gotta let the cat out here. um,
Sparky needs a break.
um, and then we'll go through a bunch of questions that we got on our Instagram channel and anything you all have here. Thanks everyone for the sound uh, adjustment. I will make some adjustments here. Yeah, let us know how we sound. I'll turn everything up.
Hey, Bernie. Hey, Thomas.
Okay, how's the sound there? Just let us know and keep letting us know in the comments, and I'll make adjustments as uh, necessary.
Okay. Well, like you said, why sign making? Get the job. some samples, and then we're going to review questions both from the chat and from our other channels.
Yeah. Um, okay, so specifically, we'll go into CAD CAM software selection and what are the different strengths of different programs, different varieties of processes, and oh, good, I'm glad the sound is better. Thanks, everyone. Different process and material selections and sourcing. I know that that's always a big question about where do you find materials, and different process overviews. And Corey and I will kind of draw on our own experiences of quoting jobs and going through processes with clients, because both before we were at Avid CNC, each of us were kind of in the fabrication world working in that industry. Okay. Okay, so why sign making? Why are we starting here?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I feel like this is a great place to start because it's something where there is a market for signs no matter where you live.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really good place to start. It's very simple. It's as simple or as complex as you want it to be, I think. And when you're just getting in, when started teaching CNC classes, signs was the first place we started with a simple V-carve sign. You can paint the lettering, paint the background, and it's something that everyone needs, whether you're making it for a friend's wedding or your friend's restaurant that's opening up down the street, or if it's something you want to turn into a business. I think specifically sign making, there are so many different processes within that. You can limit yourself by very simple mediums and very simple processes, but you could also continue to add and learn different new processes as you keep moving forward and make it more and more complex. For example, adding in LED signs where you have to learn soldering and learn light diffusion through acrylic and experiment through all these different materials. But you can also just make it out of scrap material. And both of those approaches are extremely valid, and I think a good thing to place to start. So if you're new to CNC and you want to get into CNC fabrication business and start a fabrication company, custom fabrication and sign making, I think, is a really great foot in the door.
I couldn't agree more, Sam.
So one particular thing I wanted to talk about is how sign making is a good place to start and what that might lead to, and how to kind of allow that to inform how you gain clients, how you grow your business, and how those skills that you're being paid to learn, right? Corey and I talk about this a lot. It's like, how do we get paid to learn how to do something? And I think sign making is a good one because you can say, I've been really wanting to learn how to use LED lights. I'm kind of nervous about it, something I've never done before. So maybe I'll make a sign for a business down the street for half as much as I would normally charge, just because it's something I wanted to learn how to do. If I can get all my materials covered or something like that, then that's a great approach. Okay. So when we're talking about how to get a job or how to start a job, the first thing you usually have to do is to bid on the job or make the connection with the customer or the client. There's obviously a lot of different ways to do this. It depends on how you approach it. But typically once you get a CNC in your shop, all your friends find out and then they start calling you. And so that's a really great place to start within your current network. And if you have a maker community or a maker meetup somewhere in your area, I really highly recommend reaching out to them. Or small business, local Facebook groups. There's a lot of places for business owners to come together and share their resources. So once you do one job for a food cart down the street, they're going to talk to all the other food cart owners, and then you'll be within that circle.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Sammy. And I also think that it's easy to also target people who don't have great signage, because you can see exactly that, hey, this is a great restaurant, but they're in need for a little bit more signage. And so that can also be something that you can easily recognize.
Yeah. So then that would lead us to the design process. So I have a couple of questions, initial questions to ask your customer and your client to get you started as you're going through a design process. So maybe you don't have as strong of design skills, but you have stronger fabrication skills. That's totally fine. A lot of times the software can help compensate for that. Or if you're drawing on pre-existing designs and the palette that the customer already has for you. So if you go to a restaurant, look around, is it a modern, clean, sleek space, or is it more rustic and reclaimed materials? So draw on that inspiration that's already there. And then on to the fabrication aspect, which is really the fun part. And once you've gotten the job and you're ready to go for it, really just try out new processes and materials and look at all of these other makers who've done things really well and ask questions. Okay. So here are a few of the initial questions that I like to ask a potential client. So I will bullet point these questions for them in my email, just so I say, these are the exact things I need very clear answers to in order to get started. So can you describe the scope of the project and what your goals and vision are to accomplish with the project? So, okay, you want a sign, that's great, but is it an outdoor sign? Is it hanging on the door? Is it going to be out in the rain? Is it going behind the bar? There's so many, it's such a big category and so vague. I want to know what they expect. And then also figuring out exactly what is their ideal timeline. Is it a realistic timeline compared to what you can realistically produce in that time? So timeline is a really important one, and I think that's also a good way to gauge how serious a client is, knowing exactly if they are going to be understanding of the reality of the way fabrication works. Next.
Yeah, and this is also kind of a negotiable, timeline can be a negotiable factor. And so don't be afraid to use potentially timeline to help negotiate other elements of the job.
Right. Okay, you need it in 2 days. Well, that's going to require a rush fee or whatever, because I have to put off this other job in order to finish yours by your opening, Also, why did you wait till the week of your opening, So.
And just acquiring materials costs more because you don't get to do it conveniently with other runs and exactly.
So another thing that can be kind of sensitive to talk about is budget. And I think that's something we can try to break down and not have as much of this stigma around it, because it really is something that will help inform my decisions in design making processes. So, whether your budget is $200 or $2,000, either one is fine for me, as long as if I'm a fabrication shop, I probably will set a minimum, just because I don't want $50 jobs all the time. But if you're open to doing something lower or more, then that's great too. But having a realistic budget will help you decide what materials and processes are accessible to the client for this project. Another one will be, what materials do they envision using in the project? They're like, oh, well, I imagine it being, up in lights, Hollywood sign, or is it something that they imagine, reclaimed barnwood, which can be a great material, but might not be stable enough in the long term. So this is an opportunity for you to educate your client and teach them about materials and how they last and how they actually function aside from an aesthetic purpose.
Yeah.
So, and then the last one I always like to ask is, please attach any inspiration images and photos that you might have, because I promise they've been on Pinterest or Instagram, or there's other local coffee shops that inspired them and their aesthetic. So knowing what they like and what they don't like are both equally important factors when you're going through this initial process. Hey, Gnarl Labs in the house. Good to see you. Thanks for coming. Okay. So another thing I just wanted to mention is doing your research is really important. When you're starting out with sign making, there can be rules and laws in your local area that are going to vary depending on where you're based. So if you're making this is a sign I made for on my old fabrication team for a local coffee shop, and obviously 40 pounds. This sign is way more than 40 pounds. This is being held up by a forklift. So it's a really big, heavy sign that needs to be properly engineered. And there are companies that you can reach out to, sign contractors or local engineers that you can pay us a fee in order to make sure that it is legal for it to be installed on a property. And typically this mostly applies to outdoor signs or things that are going to be above a certain height. So be sure to check your area.
Or permanently mounted.
Yeah, right. So I just wanted to mention that out the gate. So if anybody has sign contractor experience, please feel free to share that too. Okay, this is an installation I made for Clumhouse, a local sewing school. And the way I first met them was through a local makerspace that I worked at. And I first initially, I'm missing something here, but that's okay. So I initially made a sign for them, an A-frame sign. It was the very first job that I got out of the gate after working at a fab shop, and I was just going solo. And the first little A-frame sign that I made for them, they told different businesses on their block, and then they hired me to do this installation and then another installation, and then asked me to teach classes. And so then I ended up making several different cleat display installations based on this one sign that I made. So it can really, one job leads to another job, leads to another job, and so on. So being really sure to impress them with the details and the small things and showing them you're willing to go the extra mile is something really important when you're first establishing that connection. Here's another window display that came after that last one. And this was another fun installation for their sewing machines and to show off their different projects and classes you could sign up for. Okay, hold on. I might have been missing a few slides here. Okay, sorry, I skipped this one. This is the first sign that I made for Clumhouse, which was just a basic A-frame sign. And I just want to break down a few of the different materials and concepts and things that I was trying to accomplish with a very basic sign. So the first one was I could have very well done just a black vinyl sticker, and it probably would have looked just fine right here, and then sealed it under some acrylic. But instead I decided to do a V-carve engraving and a black epoxy fill, which was a relatively new process to me at the time. I had only done a couple epoxy fills, but I'm really glad I did because I got to refine my skill set a little bit more there. That sign has lasted far longer than if I had used a black epoxy or a black vinyl sticker, right? So I got a couple different birds with one stone, right? So I got longevity out of the sign. I really impressed the client with that process, and I got to practice a skill set that I was really interested in. A couple other features I tried to go a little bit above and beyond was they always have different workshops and different pop-ups. So I added this magnetic panel to it so that they could put up flyers. I added in these little magnetic arrows to give direction because it's a little bit difficult to find the workshop within the building that they're in. So those are things that they didn't ask for, but things that I took the artistic liberty to help accomplish more with this sign than just what they asked for.
Yeah, that's a great point, Sammy. I really think what you're talking about is you presented additional value without additional cost. And when we talk about starting out and really trying to create some snowball effect with your clients, providing more value, a higher value over the cost is always a phenomenal way to do that. And I view that as a perfect example of you going above and beyond and then adding some small details that really could make a big difference in the functionality of that piece.
Yeah, and you think about the usability of it. What is their experience interacting with that sign every day? They didn't ask for example, a handle on the top, but it was something small that I added. Whatever, this handle is probably $2 or $3 at the hardware store, but the fact that they can pick it up easily. There are bolts, standoff bolts from the metal bracket, from the metal um, mount to make sure that the sign doesn't fully close when they're picking it up with two hands, so their hand doesn't get smashed. So you can
Yeah.
imagine if they hurt their hand carrying my sign in and out every day, they probably won't call me back. But because I made those small adjustments, they're definitely more likely to recommend and call us again.
Yeah. And for something like this, another way to maybe go above and beyond for your clients would to be make a stand for it to live in when it gets brought inside. That might be a nice little touch where you could add a place to store the sign when it's being parked inside.
Right. And there's just a few other little things I'll point out here because we're in the Pacific Northwest. It rains a lot. So I sealed the edge of the plywood with epoxy, hand painted the epoxy on the edge, made sure that was sanded and smooth but still sealed. Put little standoff feet so it doesn't sit in a puddle when it's sitting outside. And then also educating my client, saying, hey, you should probably bring this in every night. Don't leave it out at nighttime in the rain because you want it to be able to dry off and then have a fresh new day. And I'll add several years of life to this sign. So you
Yeah.
have to educate your client also, and making them aware of all of those things. Like wooden signs don't last forever, but certain materials, and we'll get into this more later, but how certain materials tend to last outside. That's why a lot of times you'll see signs made with different plastics and vinyl and that kind of thing when they're outdoor in the rain, but they might not quite fit the aesthetic or the goals and vision of the customer that you're working with. So, okay. So here's a little bit about what I guess we're going to talk about portfolio because you want to be able to show your customers what you can do. And, while if you have a CNC or a shop or fabrication skills, unless you show your clients and um, the people they might recommend to you, if you don't show them what you can do, they won't ask for it. So if you don't have it listed on your website that you do CNC fabrication, no one's going to call you about doing CNC signage. Or if you don't have your Instagram or um, those different kinds of ways to show and illustrate the capabilities that you have.
I think portfolio also can really help you when you're determining the budget conversation. It can be a really great tool to help bridge that conversation, and you can show them some examples of your work, not only to show your capabilities, but also costs of other projects. And so you could say this was a $200 sign and this was a $2,000 sign, and you can give them some very clear visual representations of what those different budgets lead to in regards to quality and size of the project.
Yeah, exactly. So, for example, when companies that hire you to make a sign probably need a display built or built-ins or furniture.